point of a spiritual life is for your real life.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Championship Leadership Podcast. And we got Billy Heather here with us, just outside of, or maybe an hour outside of Buffalo, New York. And thanks for being here, Billy. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be here, man. Glad to be on.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, if you're listening, there's this app called Pray, which is incredible app. Take a look. I've had it on my phone for about a year before I started really using it, to be honest. And but it's been great. And anyways, I came across this guy called Billy Heather, and I loved his message and what he was all about. And I was like, man, I'm gonna find him on Instagram and shoot him a message, see if he wants to come on the show. And it was less than a week ago, so here we are. A little context. Let's go. Championship leadership. We'll start here. What's that mean to you when you hear championship leadership?
Well, obviously, I think leadership is influence. I think it's your ability to take people somewhere that maybe they don't think they can go. But I love the term championship in front of it, because that implies this isn't just going somewhere. This is going all the way.
Right.
And so to me, it is somebody that carries the influence to take people the whole distance, and to not just give a glimpse of something, but actually like take them there. I love just hearing the stories about the Bulls in the 90s, or like some of the greatest sports teams of all time. And you see a difference once it gets to that final game of the season than when it's just the middle of the season. And so for me, championship leadership, just the ability and the influence to take people far. Yeah.
Well, here's I'm interested to see where this question goes, maybe a little play off of that, right? Because, I obviously found out about you on the Pray app, and you're a lead pastor for a church now, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so I'm curious. I would say I'm a bit in the beginning journeys of my faith, but you'll hear many people talk about it. Could almost, in a way, maybe for some seem like taboo. Can there be championship leadership leader pastors? And sometimes you'll hear people say you shouldn't chase the pastor, or you shouldn't look for the church with a certain message, or you should just stay right where you're at.
Sure.
And so anyways, maybe that's a question. Is there such, because in my mind, I'm like, there's championship leader pastors 100% that people just vibe with, or that seem to really be able to connect at a different level than others. And it doesn't make anyone better than another necessarily, but at the same time, there's there's championship level sports teams. Is there such a thing in the religious world?
I think in the religious world, it has a lot more probably to do with just your capacity that would define whether it's championship or not. Because again, I think throughout the Bible, and especially in the Christian worldview, we hold true to men and women that have led what God was doing over the course of time. And so throughout the Bible, you read about leaders that are over smaller groups of people. Then you have leaders that are over bigger groups of people. You've got kings in the scriptures. You've got priests. You've got the high priest. There definitely is an order to things. But again, in terms of championship being that idea of going the full distance, I would hope in the church there are pastors that are going the distance, that aren't just going to be in it for 10, 20 years, or just in it for a personal career. For me, at least, being in ministry is more about the long haul than it is some quick fixes. And sometimes, we look at spirituality as this quick fix and this crutch to get us away from reality, when ultimately in the church, at least in my point of view, the goal of faith is to deal and make it through reality. And so as a pastor, I'm not committing to just helping someone get past a problem. I'm committing to be available for the long haul. And to me, championship leadership is being able to go the whole distance. And so, unfortunately, people give up on faith because they've had leaders that are just in and out of their lives rather than people that are accessible. To me, Jesus was the most accessible, throughout the story of his life. You constantly see random people interrupting him, coming up to him, and his leadership could have said, well, I got this mission I got to worry about. Instead, he was accessible for people in those moments. So that, to me, of course, I think there's room for it in religious space. Leaders that can go the whole distance.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I would think you'd always want to become better as a
Sure.
leader to potentially reach more people, bring more people um, to God, to Christ, and to
Sure.
continue to help them in their journeys, right?
Absolutely. And the Christian, I think the point of a spiritual life is for your real life. And so there are leaders in our church today that can draw on the principles from Jesus or the principles of the teaching of scripture and actually use it with their car salesmen, actually use it with their marketing teams, actually use
Yeah.
it. I think there has to be this understanding, like leadership principles, they come from a divine place, but God expects us to apply them in everyday life.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
for us, of course, man, we want to equip people to be the best versions of themselves out here in this world.
Yeah. Well, would you be willing to? I typically ask a similar question of like who you are, what's the path and the journey. But
Sure.
I did just happen to see your testimony or your story essentially on your YouTube channel. So yeah, how powerful that was. But maybe you could really, share that journey of yours and how
Yeah,
it's brought you to where you are today.
absolutely. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. And so my parents had kind of had God sprinkled throughout like my upbringing, but it was never like a consistent thing in my life. So when my parents split up and in high school, I just kind of got mixed up with some wrong things. Was heavily addicted to drugs by the time I was a senior in high school. Running a mess in just my world, was looking for love, was looking for fulfillment, was looking for some sort of meaning and purpose. And I remember I'd been living in Los Angeles at the time. I was 21 years old. And I was, out in like the party scene. I was really into like dance music and like raves and like going to these music festivals as a way of like escaping. And
Hmm.
so always loved music, always loved like hip hop music, always had a strong love for the history of music. But like dance music became more about getting away from something than it became
Yeah.
about music. And so I'm 21, living in LA at the time, just trying to make something work. And I had been working as a valet parking manager in Burbank. And one day at work, just had crazy pain in my back and ended up getting it checked out and found out that I had actually had a couple tumors inside my chest and my pelvis area. And so they did a quick surgery to remove one of them. And when they tested back later, it turns out it was cancer. So at 21, I got diagnosed with stage 4 testicular cancer.
Wow.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I look back at my childhood. I look back at like, I had a rough relationship with my mom, just all kinds of things happened during their divorce. This was probably the biggest like halt in my life I'd ever experienced,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, was
Young too. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I think testicular cancer, it's the greater chances are when you're younger,
Okay.
for some of them. But yeah, I was sitting in this little crammed room in North Hollywood, and this doctor gave me the diagnosis and just he told me that I was probably about a couple years too late. And he said that
Wow.
if I would have came to get it checked out earlier, there probably would have a better chance of making it.
So he's telling you like there's no chance for you
Yeah.
essentially. Like,
Yeah.
sorry.
Essentially, it was very like, you should have done this earlier.
Yeah.
And, he gave me an idea of a treatment plan, told me what I would have to do. And so I immediately jumped into chemotherapy, did about 9 months total of chemotherapy, 5 days a week, couple of weeks off, and then right back at it for 5 straight days. And then a couple of weeks off, 5 days, I did that for 9 months.
And so was it during this time where you got your faith or grew
Yeah,
a relationship with God?
it's crazy. I mean, I'd always had an idea maybe there is a God or, there might be something out there. Um, but after my diagnosis, I was getting ready to start my first round of chemo. And I went to go to one of my friend's houses, and his dad had actually worked at a church. He was the janitor at the church. And I was there hanging out. We were playing FIFA, I think, like video games.
Yeah.
His dad was like, "You need to go to church." And so I had gone to church that following week, and I heard the gospel for the first time. And I had heard not necessarily a list of things I had to do, but
Yeah.
I heard about somebody that did something for me.
Uh-huh.
And that was right there in that moment. I said, okay, if I'm going to go through this battle with cancer, I need something bigger than myself. I need somebody to lead me through this.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately who Jesus became for me.
Yeah. was there ever this part of barter system going for you? Like, hey
Sure.
God, if you could get me through this, like, man, I'm yours. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I remember responding the night that I really decided that I needed to do this. And I just remember saying, God, if you'll heal me, I'll give the rest of my life to you.
Yeah.
And not thinking anything of it, just
Yeah.
going, if I die, there's going to be a God. So I want to meet him. But if I survive, like, I'll definitely do this for you. And I survived, and I'm doing it. I'm
And you're
doing it
doing it
for
though.
him.
That's
Yeah.
It's a lot of people that have done that. And they're like, oh, hey, I'm good. Like,
yeah.
God, I'm good. Like, thank you.
No, I mean, so within that year, so I did 9 months of chemo, had one final surgery, and my church, was involved the whole step of the way. I mean, I was going to chemo, and I would show up at church. I don't know anything about the Bible. I don't know anything about religious tradition. I just know that, like, I was hooked on drugs, and I heard about somebody that did something for me. And so every week I'm just showing up for custody. Multiple because they lost a sense of curiosity and wonder about who it is, and they just took whoever was talking, they took their word for it.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that you stop pursuing God for yourself is the moment Christianity is no longer personal. If it's you believe, it's not an actual source you go to.
Hey, you're breaking up again. All right, we had a small little microphone difficulty, but I think we got it straightened out. So when continuing the leadership conversation and what you're doing as a pastor, this is something maybe that I could relate to, and I think a lot of people could. So as someone new in this journey, trying to figure out, their faith journey, is this real? Is the Bible real? Where do I start? Right. I think that's been a common one for me. And I know you talked about it a little bit, where you were just talking about how early in your journey, you didn't know anything really much about the Bible. And I don't know, I think sometimes that can be something that people allow to get in the way, or maybe it's a easy excuse to use also. But yeah, what, as a leader, how do you lead people through that journey to help them to find that relationship with Christ, and where to start and how to do it and how to go about it? I can't hear you. There we go. We can edit this stuff out too. So
how about now?
Good.
Yeah, for some reason, I think it might be like my setup. Something's going on here with my mic setup. So want me just to jump right in?
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I try to lead people in the most vulnerable and honest way I can. And so especially as someone consider like a spiritual authority or a spiritual leader, it's easy sometimes to kind of just use that and say, yeah, I should know everything and I should have all this figured out.
Yeah.
So to help people with the intimidation of the Bible, I like to kind of lead by example. That I should with disciplining, interpreting the scriptures the right way.
Yeah, you do you have AirPods?
Yeah, let me hold on.
All right.
Yeah, so especially when it comes to people being intimidated by the scriptures, or maybe like you had mentioned, not even trying their faith because they don't get it, I try to just lead through vulnerability more than knowledge. There is a temptation sometimes as a spiritual leader to assume like I should have all this figured out and I am the ultimate say on things. But I think the best way to lead someone through their own insecurities with reading the Bible is to introduce personal struggles I have. And so it might be like disciplining myself to read. It might be like interpreting the text correctly. But I try to show people that following Jesus is never about perfection. It's about progress. And the goal is to constantly integrate him into your life and integrate his teachings and his ways into your ways, so that ultimately you become like him. It's not about memorizing everything. It's not about performance. It's all about posture. It's really about how do we posture ourselves towards who he is rather than how do we perform for him and make sure we know everything.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. That's something I think a lot of people could definitely get their heads around too. So yeah, love it. What's the vision for you as a leader? I think championship leaders have incredible vision, and also typically that vision can seem a little crazy to people, and
Sure.
so it's the courage to take action on it too. And then most importantly, I guess, is like, yeah, what's the impact ultimately that you want to make through that? And as a lead pastor and doing what you do, I'm interested to hear. Obviously, you're on this Pray app, although it sounds like it was a couple of years ago that you had recorded that and almost forgot about it. But that reach and that impact that was made because of that is
Yeah,
pretty incredible, right? So yeah,
absolutely.
what's the vision for you?
Yeah, I think my vision for leadership, at least in my own life, is more about spiritual renewal than it is about knowledge and impact, with
Hmm.
the headspace and academics. For me, I feel like I'm called to help people renew something that has always been true. And rather than changing or tweaking, the Bible, I feel like my mission is to help lead people to a sense of renewing what they think about the message. Too often we're looking for these quick fix answers when sometimes we just need a new perspective towards the thing that has always been true.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my job as a leader is to help just kind of renew people's perspectives, not change thoughts as much as get us to change how we're looking at something.
Hmm. So you don't have like I want to bring 100 billion people to Christ, like some
Oh
people
yeah,
might
I mean,
say, or like,
yeah,
no,
there's
and
yeah,
there's no
there's
right or wrong answer, but I
right.
guess, yeah,
No, there's no specifics that
yeah, yeah,
I feel like there's times in my life I've had specifics, but at least doing what I do, those are always open to change because ultimately we're being
yes,
led by something bigger.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
I just feel like I'm on a mission of renewal, just trying to, renew
love it,
people's perspectives on who Jesus is.
yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. So the name of your church is what?
Gospel.
Gospel. So
Yeah.
what is that is yeah, maybe explain the name to me a little bit because I had a
Sure.
question about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, gospel is a term that's used throughout the Bible. And it was actually a term from antiquity that would be used to send any type of good news. And so when there was a battle, somebody would run ahead to the city, and say, they would bring a gospel, basically saying, good news, the victory has been won, make sure everyone's aware of it. And
Yeah.
so when you look at the story of Jesus, constantly he's referring to the gospel of the kingdom. The New Testament writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're all called the Gospels.
Called Gospels. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really the good news about what Jesus has done. So when we were coming up with a church name, we didn't want to overcomplicate it. Our
Yeah.
church is always going to be built on that message.
Yeah.
And it's more like you turn on the news at the end of a day, you turn on a local news channel, someone comes across the screen and they tell you what happened. That's what news is. And so
Yeah.
our job as
Right.
Christians is just to share what happened
Yeah.
and, change people's perspectives on it.
Yeah. Very good. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
What's let's try and take you back to a moment. Maybe it's one that you've already talked about, but I would say we have these critical moments, right? Where in life, kind of a fork in the road where it's, you either got to go left or right and trying to decide and, don't have all the information, or you want to make the best decision for yourself, but you don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? So obviously you made the decision you did, which has you where you are today, but had you not, be in a very different place. Maybe you could share a moment or two of those for you inside of your life, for that person listening right now that feels like they're in that moment themselves, trying to decide which way to go.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the greatest things I've heard about it is purpose requires the proper perspective of yourself. And before you make any major decision, you have to have the right understanding of who you are and strengths, weaknesses, where you need to be stretched and where you kind of need to just surrender and say, that's not what I'm supposed to do. When we were making the decision to plant a church, it was very much connected to our identity. It wasn't connected to our resume. Sometimes we make decisions and we just think we're going to copy and paste our last season. And we'll say, okay, I'll just do what I did back then and I'll do it over here. And if that's the case, it's always going to be up and down. But when you make a decision based on who you are and the right perspective of who you are, that to me is the healthiest step, before you make that decision.
Yeah. I love that. That's know who you are and like you said, know what that purpose is to help to guide you. You said identity, which just made me think of somebody that I was just introduced to recently. Are you familiar with James Winship?
No, James Winship. No.
All right. Well, interesting guy. I just got introduced to him, but he does a conversation on, figuring out your identity through God. And he was a New York police officer. Then he was doing so well that the CIA recruited him. And anyways, everything that he did essentially was and the results that he got were just guided through his identity with God. And it's a pretty cool story. So I thought maybe you had heard of him, maybe not, but yeah, he talks about identity, and that just made me think of that. So check out Jamie Winship, guys.
Winship. Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to check him out.
Yeah.
That's the big piece I think about when we're talking about leadership. Like, our job as leaders is to help people find their identity as much as it is to help connect them to what they're supposed to do. Yeah. I feel like as leaders, we often have a mission in mind ourselves. And so it's easy to use people to accomplish that mission. But especially in what I do, a big chunk of my job is trying to help people discover who they are so that we can connect it to what they're supposed to do. And so the discovery phase of leadership is just as important as, the destination you're taking people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Love it. Well, as we start to wrap this up, if there's one or two things that you could give the listener today that if they were to implement today in their life, it would help move it forward, little nuggets or principles, what would those be?
Sure. For me, vision is such a key word when it comes to leadership. We like to use that word, especially in like our mission and where we're going. But some of the best principles I've applied is making the vision plain enough that you can share it, writing it down so you can revisit it, and then making it scalable so it's not just internally based. For me, I think vision can easily just become like currency to get us again to where we want to go. But there's different types of vision for different seasons. And as a leader, I would say never lose sight of that. How crucial vision is and how practical it can live out in everything you do.
Yeah. Love it. So what's the main way we can follow more about what you're up to, your church?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Billy is Blessed. Our gospel church info is right there in my handle as well, but you can find us at gospelchurch.co. And to find all my other stuff like podcasts and books and all that, it's billyheather.co is where you can get all that.
Okay. Yeah. What's the name of your podcast?
Podcast is called The Good News Podcast. Yeah. So yes, sir. Yes, we got Gospel Church. We got Good News Pod.
Love it.
Yeah. We got 9 episodes under our belt, and it's just been Christian conversations about leadership moving forward.
That's incredible. Yeah. So go ahead and check that out. We'll get all that linked up for you as you listen. But appreciate having Billy here today. And again, if you've enjoyed this conversation, just like I have, then don't go anywhere. Stay here and stay tuned for the next episode coming up. But Billy, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for your time.